Hey guys, following is an interview with Dr. Huw Davies. He's recently defended his PhD thesis, so he has the title of Doctor, which makes him Dr. Huw. He commented himself during the interview that perhaps that means he should have a TARDIS, which I love that. So this is a really, really fun interview, and we cover a load of different topics. But just a bit of background about Huw. He got his undergraduate degree at Keele University in philosophy and international politics, and some of that sort of philosophical training, if you like, certainly came through today. There's quite a lot of references to big thinkers in the field, and Huw clearly has an interest in this area as well. And I like to see that interplay between the sort of more foundational ideas of philosophy and see them expressed through his science and reasoning about his field of interest, which is kind of analytics, management, and so on in healthcare. And so after his degree, sort of more recently, he's got his PhD now in decision analytics and risk, a solution framework for cross-functional efficiency in the NHS. That's the title. Oh, I meant to say that hilariously, his first degree has philosophy, politics, classics, and astrophysics associated with it. So sort of kind of makes him one of the smartest people in Britain, probably. But no, Huw brings humanity to the proceedings. This is a fun chat. We've had some sort of connections and overlaps and stuff in the past as well. But yeah, really, really great guy to talk to about things like analytics, the potential use of AI in healthcare, but also to think about sort of things like competency frameworks and how do you assess the efficiency, functionality of departments, problems with translation between departments and people kind of not quite connecting in terms of requirements and so on. So there's a really, really interesting, wide-ranging discussion, and it's one I hope you enjoy. Cheers. Bye-bye. Hey, Huw.
Hey Matt, how are you doing?
Hanging together. It's a bit cold and wet here in Cheltenham, but yeah, apart from that, all things are good, thank you. So just a brief word about what we're doing here, why we're talking today. So I thought I'd do a series of conversations with people from the healthcare sector with a particular interest in sort of analytics, artificial intelligence, the future, the state of play in the healthcare sector, because I know there's quite a lot of political stuff going on as well. So Huw, you're a perfect guy to start with. So, congratulations on being the first healthcare related guest that we're doing. Thanks very much for joining us. So, could you start by just giving us a bit of a background, your sort of origin story, how you sort of got involved in healthcare analytics in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess prior to the lodge stint in my career, did a couple of years as a training manager, training graduate fast track people for a blue chip company, which was very interesting. Found out that I loved training at that point, but I kind of had since university a background in sales. I kind of enjoyed that because there's a bit of a thrill with it. So I thought I wanted to be in recruitment at the time. Um, and that's where I ended up after that contract. When I moved back down to the southwest, found myself with a good firm, Van Group. Enjoyed working with those guys, some really talented people there. At the same time, it was recruitment, and whilst I enjoyed the buzz and the working with, which was then predominantly healthcare market, it still felt like I wasn't working for the benefit of the NHS. I was working for the benefit of commerce, which I was, unashamedly so from the organisation's perspective. But it was around the time that the change in regulations was occurring for the off-payroll employment and IR35. And I found recruitment companies were treading into the world of consultancies without doing any consultative work. And similarly, consultancies were stepping into the world of the recruitment work without actually doing any recruitment work. And I just felt that the NHS wasn't getting best value from that. So I stepped out to try and form some form of hybrid option, which really ended up being more along the lines of identifying problems and them actually, rather than needing recruitment or consultancies in, rather than just need some training. So I've always been, all the way through my recruitment career, I carried on the training stuff, focused heavily on what people call soft skills, behavioral skills. Um, and did a fair bit of that whilst at the same time doing the consulting work of identifying how to develop the teams, where they're missing in the leadership, that kind of thing. Because it's a point of annoyance sometimes that within the NHS you get some phenomenal clinicians, some phenomenal analysts, some phenomenal accountants that all of a sudden they do such a good job they get promoted, and all of a sudden they're not clinicians anymore, they're not analysts anymore, they're not accountants anymore, they're managing stuff that they've never been trained to do. And I think that's where the biggest skills gap was. But pretty soon on, a number of my key clients that I worked with really closely over the years saw that I'd stepped out and wanted to support that, so invited me along to the first AFA conference, the Association of Professional Healthcare Analysts, where I struck up some really good relationships with a number of people across the analytical workforce. One of which led on to a communication piece. It was a Mind the Gap project with the Health Foundation. So I worked with the University of Exeter, Devon Partnership, AFA, and myself to try and get a stalled project back online that was looking to identify why it is that analysts will produce reports for requesters of information, and then those requesters would really far too often come back and say, that's not what I asked for, or can you do this instead? And there was no real reason why that should happen, at least prima facie anyway. So we completed that report, and I was working with Professor Martin Pitt down at the University of Exeter, who pointed me in the direction of systems thinking, which I instantly fell in love with. Love the idea that there are so many different perspectives to view things from, because to cast the time back even further than I started, when I was in uni, part of what I studied was philosophy, and one of my favourites was, despite his social impact, was Martin Heidegger, who had some really great phenomenological pieces that he put forward. And I kind of worked out, if you will, that the reason that there's such miscommunication is because people are talking a slightly different language. Heidegger said everything that we know is born from experience, which kind of holds out, really. That we can never have the same conceptual framework, never have exactly the same understanding about things. But I kind of broke that down to the kind of micro experiences. So we all broadly come from the same socio-cultural background, and we all kind of, most people in this country went to the same sort of schools, the same sort of learnings, have the same sort of understanding. So why is there that difference between these departments? Well, people within operations, when they look at things from an operational perspective. People in analytics, when they look at things from an analytics perspective. I kind of brought a rather broad stroke analogy for that is when, or example rather, when a ward manager may come along to an analyst and say, I need my bed occupancy, please. So the analyst says, yeah, I know what bed occupancy is. I'll get that figure for you. Got the figure for them. And the ward manager says, that's just not right. How can it be right? I've discharged 5 people this morning. And actually what the data analyst has done is extracted the information that is part of the HSSS data.
Right, yeah.
And they've done it from the midnight the night before, which is what the NHS Data Dictionary says is the definition of bed occupancy rates. Whereas the manager wanted it as in count the number of beds I've got free now.
Yeah.
The analyst was saying, what's the official number? Both were right, both were wrong. And it's because of their micro experiences within those departmental settings that caused the problem. So I wanted to investigate that further. That's what led me on to study my PhD at Southampton, which is entirely on that subject. Worked with the guys at the University Hospital Southampton to do my research. And I worked on the basis that if you can create, you don't have to create the same experience because you can't do that. But what you can do is create a shared experience over the problem at hand. So rather than receive an email stating this is what I want, and then people interpreting that, they sit down together and work through what the problem is. By doing that, they have the same point of reference for what they're looking to get. And actually, That probably about 80% of the time eradicated that miscommunication. I think 80%, okay, well, that's good, but how often does it happen?
Mm.
Um, According to some colleagues at NHS England that I worked with on the National Competency Framework, they calculated it as being up to £100 million a year is wasted on reiterating work that didn't need to be reiterated otherwise, or just fixing those mistakes.
Yeah.
£100 million a year is huge.
Yeah.
You're talking realistically about £10,000 per analyst is wasted on remediation work. You know, you're looking at
Mm.
about 2 days a week
Mm.
that's been done unnecessarily, and this will reduce that to a couple of hours a week,
Yeah.
such that I figured in my very broad stroke calculations, my research was predominantly qual rather than quant. You're probably looking at saving between 50 and 70 million pounds a year just by getting people in the same room, and that
Nationwide.
takes
Yeah.
nationwide, and that
Yeah.
takes out. That includes the time for the meetings and everything else as well. You've got a net profit of
Mm.
50 to 100 million pounds a
And
year.
just think of the reinvestment potential on that figure there.
It's huge,
Mm.
absolutely huge. That's £5,000 per analyst,
Mm. That's crazy, isn't it?
which 5 to 7. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
I'm pleased to say that that's all been submitted, passed my Viva, done the edits,
Mm.
all done. So yeah, they call me Dr. Huw now. I should buy myself a TARDIS, really. Um,
Just briefly, Hugh, I
yeah.
love there's so much going on with what you've just said. So you're almost doing a
Mm.
form of anthropology inside these departments. You know, you kind of observe, you're kind of living and breathing their world, and then trying to understand what's going wrong with it. I love this because I've worked in that domain for quite a few years, the
Yeah.
last 20 years, about 15 of them, right? And is it the idea that someone is doing a scientific study of what's going on there? Because everyone knows it's not quite doing what it ought to do. And you've got, as you pointed out, you've got the statutory reports with this kind of like top-down perspective on things. That doesn't work for the operational management. In fact, half the reports you don't really, as exactly as you've just pointed out. So that's really encouraging to hear that someone's looking at it for starters. But yeah, what comes next? I mean, so have you actually put in demonstrable improvements through this kind of philosophical approach to it? I love this.
Yeah, we have it at a couple of trusts so far, at least in a quantifiable way.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, the need is to is to get that rolled out nationwide, really,
mm,
so that everyone can reap the benefits of it.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, you've got the evidence. You've
Unfortunately,
done the empirical work now. It's just, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, I had my Viva last June, right in the middle of the government demonising the whole
Mm,
bureaucracy elements.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I'll come on to that, but that really uh, annoys me. Not because there isn't bureaucracy in the NHS. Of
Mm,
course there is. Not that there isn't bureaucracy in NHS England. Of course there is. The whole organisation isn't bureaucratic. It's not.
mm,
There are some incredibly talented people there, and I worked with a number of them on the National Competency Framework. We'll go
mm.
into that if you want later on.
Yeah. Yeah, I love to.
But the people there are immensely talented,
Yeah.
and it annoys me that they're kind of viewed as bureaucratic. It kind of slightly miffed me as well that I finished my PhD at the time and they made those announcements, so I haven't had the opportunity to roll it out.
Mm,
But it's not going anywhere now. It's committed to paper. It's going to be held at the University of Southampton. It's always going to be available. So that's if nothing else, I've done that bit. I mean, but yeah, it was the National Competency Framework that actually is probably my
mm.
proudest moment, to be fair.
Yeah. Could we just briefly hover over sort of the performance culture aspect of the NHS?
Yes.
What are your views on that? Because I mean, some of these reports are absolutely essential to understand, how things are going in A&E and what you, and I understand the need for these targets to pull you in the right direction. But has that been bureaucratized? Is there too much? I mean, what are your views, Hugh? You're the expert.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I wouldn't say absolutely I'm the expert, but yeah, you're absolutely right. There is a need for performance monitoring. I don't think it's helpful to compare those nationwide.
Mm,
The people have very different um, trusts that they go to. There's absolutely no point in comparing a small trust like Yeovil District Hospital, very good hospital by all accounts, with Imperial College. Why would you compare their A&E waiting times when they've got very different pressures facing them? Yes, there are standards that you should be sticking to, and there are targets that are helpful, like a 4-hour wait is a useful target. But to say that you're not doing it because another hospital is shouldn't be a point of criticism. It should be a point of identifying why that is the case. And I think it's too much rod and not enough carrot. The people talking about the whole payment by results thing, well, that was a bureaucratic nightmare in its own right. But there's a problem. Let's fix it. It gives people an understanding as to what's going wrong, and we can actually identify it. So yeah, I do like performance figures, but I like performance figures that are in context, and you can't contextualize performance figures for 250 trusts. It doesn't make any sense. Similarly for ICBs, they're in the same position. I think there is a solution to it. I am hot off the press for you. I've joined forces with a few other people to create the Data Health Observatory for Health and Care. Now, this is largely in response to the government's removal of half the budget for ICBs and the totality of NHS England. But moreover, we're creating essentially a consultancy think tank that is there to take everything that the government throws out and mandates and says, okay, well, there's no point in arguing with it. What do we need to do to maximize the benefits for patients? What's the best patient outcomes we can achieve through this? And there's about 30 of us that are kind of all directors or specialists working across the NHS, from CSUs, ICBs, acute trusts, etc. There are a kind of council think tank that, for example, we're just about to launch an investigation piece into the 10-year plan. We're going to break it down across the 3 main themes, have 10 chapters, and basically write 3 volumes of this is one element of the 10-year plan under this theme. What do we need to do to make it work? It's not going anywhere. So how can we maximize the health outcomes for patients? And it's that kind of sort of thing that we're doing. We'll set it up as it's not a profit-making organization. It's a community investment company. And hopefully it will take the slack from what happens when the CSUs disappear and the NHS England disappears, and we can provide that support in a completely apolitical way.
Is that the plan ultimately, Huw, to actually completely wipe NHSE off the table? Is that the end goal?
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
that's crazy. I mean, I thought they were pivotal in all sorts of stuff.
Well, the argument is they're subsuming it in with the Department of Health and Social Care.
Right.
Because everyone knows that central government is less bureaucratic than any part of the NHS.
Yeah.
But yeah, ultimately what they've done is to get that through politically. They called NHS England a quango, which by definition it isn't, just because the policy advisors within the government know that the population doesn't like the term quango. So if you want to get something through, demonize the bureaucrats, call it a quango, and then they won't mind when you wind it up to increase your power into the Department of Health and Social Care. Problem with there not being any organization outside of that to take the workload is that the Department of Health and Social Care is politicized. NHS England was kind of a bit standoff from that. But it goes back to the Health and Social Care, the HSCIC, which was Health and Social Care. I've completely forgot what it stood for, but there we are. NHS Digital as became. That was supposed to be a standalone independent organisation that could provide independent, unbiased results of the performance for help the NHS. So when a certain politician came along and said, "Can I have these figures, please?" and someone turns back and said, "Well, they're not the figures," and they say, "I don't care. I want these figures."
Mm.
It's kind of a worry then, because then they lost their independence, and the reports could be manipulated, because reports can be manipulated. It depends on what sort of figure you take, how robust your
Mm.
statistical rules are followed,
Mm.
robustly they're followed. You
Yeah, yeah,
can, if you apply the wrong techniques, you can get an answer you like a little bit better.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so what we would like to do is to take that middle ground as an independent, but apolitical organisation, and that is created from the healthcare community. It is a CIC. It's run by healthcare for healthcare,
Mm.
but without any of the governmental interference. But also,
So it's
wasn't
immune.
else
It's immune to propaganda and all that
a little
cynicism,
bit?
essentially. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We're trying to at least protect it to a degree from that. But at the same time, something else that was said at the time of the Quango Gate, was that where there's a gap, you can get consultancies in. And all of a sudden, for a Labour Party government, which is quite surprising, to announce that private sector can come in and do
Mm.
that is kind of a little bit worrying in terms
Mm.
of the privatization by stealth that everyone is always concerned about. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that's what it is, but it opens the door.
Mm.
So if we can get an organization that is not for profit, run by the community, providing the data support across the country, and this is for things like GIS analytics. A hospital trust isn't going to need a GIS analyst;
Mm.
it's too small. Whereas actually nationwide it's important.
Mm.
Similar with population health management and a number of other different areas where there is that requirement for uniformity across the country.
Mm.
Um, and we've got this within data, and I don't see a problem with those organizations arising for all support functions.
Mm.
Why would there be a problem for human resources CIC that can provide that specialist advice across
Mm.
all the NHS organizations in the country? Procurement, if you want to do shared procurement, why not have a procurement
Mm.
CIC that's there to do that?
Yeah.
Um, IT, same thing again.
I was just about to ask you that, Hugh. Why doesn't the NHS, what is it, the fourth or fifth biggest employer in the world? Why don't they have their own IT department? Why do we give so much money to Cerner every year?
Well, because someone had a great idea of having a national program for IT where they wanted to centralize one single source of truth, one
Mm.
single patient administration system. So to do that, we'll split it up 5 different ways and get everyone to organize it themselves. You couldn't write it, could you?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
so, well, it's a centralized IT support. There was going to be, actually. I think it was the centralized IT function was supposed to be sitting in with Propco within property services when the provider split happened. Um, I don't think that necessarily went that well.
Mm.
So it kind of disappeared. But there is the opportunity there. And unfortunately, I think it would have to take the form of some kind of NHS revolution that
Mm.
all, as these providers like NHS England and the CSU disappear, I think there is a need for those people who have that expertise that doesn't exist within um, providers or within ICBs
Mm.
to pull together some form of CIC for that specialist
Mm.
area, to provide those services. And then all of a
Mm.
sudden, you've got an NHS which is no longer serviced by the government. The money can come through to the ICBs or these super trusts, if you put a cape on them or whatever they're going to call them.
Mm.
Um, and the money can come in, and then they can say, well, that's for the bits that we operate on, but we need this as well. So we'll give
Mm.
this money to this organization to provide us with this service
Mm.
on a case by case basis or an annual basis, however it is.
Mm.
Um, and then you can get best practice more easily shared,
Mm.
because something that works in one trust, the CIC could take it somewhere else. So
Yeah.
in our instance, if we do a good population health management model for people long-term unemployed or long-term out of work, then why couldn't that be rolled out in
Mm.
similar geographies?
Yeah, in
There'll
terms of
be
the
differences.
methodology, some of the the maths and so on. But I mean, there's a dotted line from this to what you were saying earlier about your philosophy of, instead of just throwing consultants at a problem, actually look at what you've got in the existing department
Yeah,
and grow what you've already got, because there's nothing wrong with these guys' brains, and if they can just get in the right process and as you say,
totally.
sort of bridge the gap with some of your translation between operational clinical perspectives and so on. But yeah, I mean, I love this. So you're talking about forming a sort of, well, not off grid, but like an organic sort of authentic community of interested parties who want to solve their own problems.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
absolutely.
they know what's going on because they've got one foot in the problem.
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
we're going to form it up probably, well, initially as a kind of, this is the going to be, when the organization grows, they're going to be employees of that organization, of the
Mm,
CIC.
mm,
But we're not going to just stick to our own echo chamber of people on there. There will be a huge number of people that will be um, within that group, on that council of directors, as it were.
mm,
And in addition to that, the third arm of it, one arm being the think tank, one arm being the consultancy, and the third
mm,
and final arm is the bursary, where we identify talent within the data community
mm.
and fund their further education, be it masters, PhDs, etc., things like that, and offering fellowships.
Yeah.
For the observatory. So yeah, it's absolutely that, and I think and there's an opportunity, and this is where I kind of worry really that get on my soapbox, but there is the opportunity for people to take control of the NHS again and actually change the way it functions, protect it from private sector, protect it from government control. Yes, the government owns it; it's a private sector public sector organisation, but the control over it shouldn't be controlled by it, whether it's an election year or not.
Mm.
I was with a great chap, actually. I don't know if you know, chap Tony Ranzetta, many years ago. Many years ago, he was the managing director of Swindon CCG, I think, at the time. No, he was chief operating officer at University Hospital Bristol at the time. And I was having a chat with him, and I said, "Well, it's with following the Lansbury review. This is a once in a life. They're calling it a once in a lifetime change for the NHS."
Mm.
And he said, "Well, it absolutely is.
Mm.
It's the seventh once in a lifetime change I've gone through." Um, and that stuck with me. That was nearly 20 years ago now, probably, or 15 years ago. But since then, there's been another three.
Mm. Yeah.
And every time you have a change of government, they obviously, they want to put their stamp on things, so they change what's gone on before, thinking they have all the solutions, and disrupt an immensely talented workforce that has never been settled.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, people, you don't need to, people always say that SPC charts, for example, a very small aside, are
Mm.
really useful within the NHS. SPC charts are designed for mature environments.
Mm.
I don't think the
Yeah.
NHS has stayed stable enough to
Yeah.
actually be able to capitalize on SPCs.
Yeah.
So a
I
bit of
think
a
that they're
glib
probably
statement
good
because
for
I know it
highlighting
is.
data. They're probably good for highlighting data quality issues.
Do they need highlighting? Um,
Yeah, there is that.
and I think there is so much opportunity there for people to evolve their understanding of their own environment,
Mm.
and be able to use that for improving themselves, their organization, or conversely using that to support other organizations. And I think the waste of where we're at the moment, there's a couple of projects that we're looking at. We're going to get sponsored, for example, by if there are any sponsors watching. No, we've got a potential sponsor for this 10-year report that we're going to do,
Yeah.
which will be which is really exciting. And
Yeah.
but it's that opportunity to be able to say you don't have to worry.
Mm.
There is help out there, and you haven't got to pay consultancy practices
Mm. Yeah.
extortionate amounts of money to do it.
So is this mostly about training and just kind of redirecting those existing efforts in a more sort of pragmatic way? I mean, I'm just trying to get my head around sort of what the effects might be on the ground. Say I was a senior information analyst in a reporting department somewhere. I mean,
Mhm.
how might we think and work differently with some of these ideas?
Okay, well, not at all necessarily. You'll carry on about your business if you're within a provider trust, largely being unchanged by the current changes.
Mhm.
Um, you'll go about your reporting business as usual. If there's a change mandated by government, the CIC will be there to help translate that. We may well develop our own. Um, it could be
Mm.
possible, rather, we may well develop our own software to be able to translate what you've got into what they want. It could be any one of a number of things. It could be pastoral advice of how to
Mm.
integrate with other organizations in the local area. It could be technical advice, but basically what we're looking to do, training, one part of it. Some part of it could actually be running the reports for them.
Yeah.
If it's
Yeah.
a skill set they haven't got and don't think it's worthwhile doing, if it takes 1 hour a day, but
Yeah.
1 hour a week or whatever,
So you're taking the
but it's a
strain, you're
very
taking some of that strain, aren't you, essentially? And obviously the
yeah,
efforts, yeah.
hopefully removing some of that pressure that they don't think that because there's no CSU anymore, and
Mm.
there's no, or there will be no CSU, or there will be no NHS England, that they have to do everything themselves.
Mm.
Um, we could help them do it. We could do it ourselves, or we could show someone else, or show them to someone else that can do it,
Yeah.
because it doesn't matter to us about making
Because that
profit
was the key thing
because
with
we're
this, isn't it? Is that you've got this community of professionals working with the trust, taking some of the strain with these CIC changes. So you've got a representation there, but it's sharing good practice, isn't it? Well, they've solved this problem. They're in a similar situation. It's having that think tank to sort of orchestrate it. It's absolutely brilliant idea. I love this.
I think
Um,
what I like as well about it is that we're health and care.
mm,
So we're not pitching ourselves just to the NHS. There is a huge amount of data and a huge amount of talent within local authorities that deal with social care data,
mm,
which is massively neglected. And by pulling that all of that information together is where we get our greatest results in things like population health management. You can't
mm,
run population health manager without social care data, I don't think.
mm,
Um, can you do it without GP data? Not
mm,
really. Which is where the FTP is probably going to fall down.
mm.
Not fall down, but struggle, because it's going to be difficult for ICBs to get GP data into it without A, changing the law,
Mm.
or going back out to GPs and say, can we have your data to put in FTP?
Mm. Yeah.
Uh,
I've encountered something myself lately around this and some of the constraints with NHS data. So, I mean, with the SUS submissions, for example, so take the outpatient activity, you very rarely get any diagnostic coding within that, right? So, if you are trying to do some study of a particular condition, you're not going to be able to get it from CDS, right? Because trust, there's no financial incentive to record that data, and it's like, well, that's crap, because you
yeah.
you, you want to see how particular you know diagnosis groups are performing in terms of their wellness and so on. And also, there's no obvious link with the demographics. I think this is what you're kind of pointing at here, isn't it? Is finding a way of understanding the relationship between the effort going on in the healthcare system and the demographic, the characterization of the patients that you're dealing with, which, as you pointed out, vary dramatically across the country. So
Mm.
I mean, where are we on that? Because I've often within trust, I've thought, we should be doing something much fancier with these waiting lists, and we should be
Yeah.
doing. I mean, I'm blathering on lots of gas, but no action. Because it's hard to do. Here and
Yeah,
there,
it's hard.
we've had a little bit of success mapping stuff in, but it's a bit of an uphill struggle. So, do you have any views on that, and potentially at some point in this conversation, get to maybe AI and some of your views on how that
Mm.
might be deployed as well?
Well, I'm hoping that the New Health Research Centre, um, co-funded by Wellcome, I think, is going to look in that area. Um, it's going to be working alongside HGR UK, Health Data Research UK, a great bunch of people, a lot of time for them. Um, so hopefully they'll be able to identify where those gaps can be first of all, just grab the low-hanging fruit where those gaps can be filled nice and easily, and then perhaps put a strategy in place whereby those gaps can be closed. We'd happily work with them on that, because it's immensely important. But it's kind of difficult to make those big changes in looking at the diagnostic data that you do put into things like CTS, when at the coalface you've got people putting dates in the wrong format. Down to the very, very basic data quality. It's very difficult then to add another field to complete, because there's a huge amount of training to be involved in just, you've got to type this extra word. You've got to tell that to everybody. Otherwise, one piece of corrupt data will, in effect, corrupt the submission, so that when you aggregate it, you've got bits here and there that you're not particularly sure of. So,
yeah,
there is a way for it, and I think that the way of doing it again is going to be through the evolution of the technology that we use. There is no reason, for example, why this point in time you haven't got a clinician with, say, a nice pair of Ray-Bans on, with the camera and fitted in, and the other technology in there, that when they're consulting with a patient on a ward or what have you, they can suggest a few things. The data can be recorded by the system, and they can go back out once they finish with the patient and say, right, let's do some quick calculations, go out, see what the AI says, see how it correlates with their idea, and then go back to the patient and say, well, this is probably what I think, so therefore I'm probably going to recommend these tablets for the next week, and hopefully by then you notice an improvement and we can get you discharged. And the computer is hearing that, sends a message down to pharmacy, little robot arm grabs the medicine off the shelf, goes past the pharmacist to make sure it's the right one, because those human checks are important, goes back up to the ward, gets checked by the clinician and passed to the nurse to be administered instantly.
Wow.
Rather than wait. The technology is there to do that now.
Yeah, it is.
It doesn't need to be science fiction, but if you think of then being on a ward, from a personal perspective, you being diagnosed with something and then waiting 6 hours for it to come up from the pharmacy, why? Doesn't need to. And as long as the investment is there to move in the technology, then you've got a clinician who is being supported by AI. The AI can come up with suggestions and learn from the clinician's corrections of their solutions. The clinician doesn't need to write a script up with their laughably awful handwriting that the cliche insists on. It just makes things easier.
Yeah, I mean, there's something in there. There's possibly a philosophical or ethical question. I mean, if some of this AI functionality starts replacing human staff, but they're demonstrably doing it better than human staff, and we can prove that empirically, then in a healthcare critical setting, that you presumably we'd prefer the robots, right? We'd have to say, well, that is the best decision in terms of patient outcomes, right?
Yeah, absolutely is.
So,
But I don't think we're replacing people. We're changing where the people are useful. Ultimately, I did a podcast before Christmas on AI governance, and wherever there is a decision to be made, not a calculation, that is where people should be involved.
Right, so you totally keep the existing structure, processes, departments, but just enhance what they're doing with AI and helping them to make better decisions.
There needs to be governance control, absolutely. And I don't think we're decades off artificial general intelligence. These things aren't going to be able to think and use common sense for a long time yet. So they can't make any decisions. They can make suggestions, but those suggestions need to be signed off. And yes, you could say that, okay, well, they can make those decisions based on the information that they have to work to a logical conclusion. But when you base a 95% probability on a 95% probability on a 95% probability, it doesn't take long before you're down to below 50%. So at each stage, there needs to be some human governance there. And for the kind of more transactional pieces of work that we do at the moment, and this is something I've been suggesting to analytics teams over the last year, is yes, AI is going to be computationally superior. Of course it is. It's a machine. Let it do that.
Mm.
You need to do the bit that it will never be able to do. And that's the consultancy.
Mm.
Um, you need to speak to internal and external clients
Mm.
and to do that piece that I spoke about before when you sit down and work over a problem and create that shared understanding.
Mm. Yeah.
Can't do that with a computer.
No, you can't.
Um, and actually come to those joint, because there's other things as well. There's that joint ownership thing of a
Mm.
problem and its
Yeah.
mistakes that you get from those interactions that you can't get from working with a computer.
There's something.
Um,
There's a dotted line from this to one of my previous guests, a guy called Nicholas Hinrich, and he's a neuroscientist. And they do this thing called hyperbrain scanning, and so it's observing these neural patterns that are shared across multiple human brains, right? And it's just there seems to be, so being in a room with someone, you are kind of neurologically bonding with them
yeah,
in some way. It sounds a little bit left field, but apparently it's hard science, right? And so there's absolutely something in what you're saying. And once you've shared that solution, you're speaking the shared language. There's a shared narrative, a shared vision, and you just don't get that through email, and you're not going to get that with robots. And it's also, I think it's important to just briefly emphasize what you said there about LLMs. They don't know anything. There's a lot of confused people out there right now thinking it's my best friend. They understand me, and it tells me that my theory of everything is definitely correct, and all this kind of. It's so they don't actually understand anything. Although there are some, very well educated, intelligent people out there saying, no, we think there's something weird on in there, but it's still just circuit boards, right? Fundamentally
yeah,
doing statistics.
yeah, absolutely. LLM hallucinations are interesting, but they are that they are just interesting at the moment.
Yeah, yeah.
But ultimately they will get there. I
Do you
have no
think?
doubt.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
And I do think I agree with Stephen Hawking. It does pose an existential threat to the human race.
Mm,
And I think there are three possible outcomes. We either stop using AI completely and don't let it evolve, which I think is the wrong thing to do.
hmm.
We let it and hope that we don't become slaves to the machine. But I think there's perhaps a bolder, more Nietzschean way of looking at it, and we properly embrace it, and we use, and in fact, make it sentient before it can be
Mm,
by letting it use us, and we
mm,
fully integrate wearing wearable tech.
mm.
We then control the calculations,
Yeah.
and it has no need for any independent sentiency
Mm.
because it has the benefits of ours.
Yeah, Hugh,
Um,
I think just briefly, I think you've nailed it there because people think, oh, there's AI's over there and we're over here, and there's going to be a war between us, like freaking Skynet or something. But actually,
yeah,
what you've just said is the more inevitable thing is that integration.
mm,
We're working alongside it, as you say. We're going to brain interfaces, that all that kind of thing. It's going to support a deeper integration of human thinking in a way. And the other
absolutely,
just briefly, the other thing to say on this is that I think to some degree we already live within formal processes in society. There's already a certain sort of digitization of human culture already. So we're already living inside a sort of an intelligent system, right? That
mm.
so I think people a lot of the fear about AI is a little bit. I think a lot of
I
it's
think,
just to try and generate interest and make money. To be honest,
yeah.
or the scare
I mean,
mongering. But
I think if it's not managed properly, I mean, without knowing it and without knowing how it will be in the future, yes, there is an element to it which poses an existential threat to human race. I think if we do it properly, it doesn't at all. And it promotes the evolution of the human race.
mm,
Nietzsche spoke about the transition of man into Superman. And there is only so much we can do biologically. If you think of how advanced, how the leaps and bounds we've made over the last 25 years have been, and then compare that with the previous 50 years, then the
mm,
previous 100 years, and then
yeah,
the previous 200 years, and then before that, we were lucky if we invented an arrow. There's a
yeah,
huge amount of stuff that we've done really in the last 5 minutes of
mm,
the human race that we can't continue to do. The reason we do it, of course, is because we found personal computers 30 years ago,
mm,
because the iPhone came out in 2007.
mm,
Um, was it 2009? WhatsApp came out.
yeah. And there's just been an explosion of ideas, hasn't there? Because I mean, wherever you are on planet Earth now, you can access quantum physics lectures from Harvard. So
Absolutely.
absolutely, which has obviously increased the amount of idea generation, and so hence the continuing sort of what is it? Very big curve.
Yeah,
Exponential. I mean, I was going
exponential.
to
That's it.
mention
Yeah,
earlier because you said, oh, there'll be the adopters and the non-adopters, and I was thinking, was it like this with the plough? Were people saying, oh, it's the devil's work, but this is a bit different to the plough, isn't it? Because or is it? I don't know.
is it? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. When our ancestors were in caves, some were sitting around a fire.
Mm,
That looks an awful lot like witchcraft.
yeah, yeah,
To,
and dangerous.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But then again, it changed the way we live forever, and
Mm,
so did agriculture, and so did people understanding what people meant by the noises that they made.
mm, mm.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's it.
yeah. I mean,
I
there's something just briefly. There's something kind of creepy about the fact that actually you can do language this easily with a statistics engine. I mean, I don't want to sort of downplay the magic of being human and our ability to wield language, but we've just built a machine that can kind of do it.
we've built an information that can recognize the sound,
Yeah, yeah, that's
that
true.
can recognize the word. Can't
Yeah,
understand any of it,
and the intonations and our
and I think
smells
that's
and
where we evolved the other way around.
mm,
We understood the feeling that someone had by the sound. We don't know
mm,
what they meant. They understood that they were in pain. We didn't know that they'd trodden on a thorn. They could have been
mm.
bitten by a cougar, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But we
yeah.
we empathize with them, and it's that level of empathy that is where our advantage is over any form of change. Is the fact that we
Mm,
can put ourselves in the position of someone else,
mm.
um, which is why it's a shame that so many people choose not to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Why is that? This is I love this conversation because we focused on healthcare. Now we've dived straight into philosophy and sort of ethics and AI and stuff. But I'm sure we'll find a way back. But yeah, so could we talk a bit more about the consultancy and Davies Furlong and how long that's been
Yeah,
in the game and what you guys are into? I mean, you've touched on some of that already. But any
yeah.
any interesting projects coming up? And are you guys looking at AI and what you're going to do with it?
Well, the most interesting project that we've done has been the National Competency Framework.
Mm,
That was amazing. I kind of got, I was speaking to Ming Tan and Sarah Culkin about what was going to happen with that. And then there was some landscape review that AFA was doing about what frameworks are out there.
mm,
And then alongside AFA won the tender for the testing of the Alpha um, national competency framework, which I thought was brilliant. So I started that.
It's huge. It's huge.
It was massive.
Congratulations. Yeah.
But what I didn't realize is it wasn't actually the testing. When I got there to test it, there wasn't one yet created. So the 4 month contract to test it also involved the development of it.
Development and tech.
Um, yeah,
I love
but
that.
but it was great because all I did is, well, there's a kind of Davis Furlong engagement methodology that I've coined EFEM. People hate the sound of it. But actually, it's a kind of 4 pillar approach to engagement. And that's what we used on the framework. We just basically brought as many people in as we could. Um, People who hated it, people who didn't think it could be done, to people who are going to love it and really do it, and to the
Mm,
critics. We got the squeaky wheels involved, and if we knew that if we got they liked it, we were
mm,
on the right tracks.
yeah.
And all the suggestions, all we did was pull some loose suggestions together from the government data service or whatever it was,
Yeah.
government analytics framework.
Mm,
Um, Pulled a skeleton together for that, tore it apart in working groups, wrote the things out, and basically just split. There were 44 different frameworks being used across 100 people that we interviewed. Um, so
knee
what we
deep
had
in
to do is,
frameworks.
yeah, so we needed to make it applicable to everyone within analytics, within health and care. So, we removed the leadership because not everyone wants to be a leader. We removed the software because people use different softwares and different technologies. We removed the domain so people can, from an ICB, can use the framework
Mm,
just as well from an acute trust. And we put them to the side. We didn't throw them away. We just put them to the side. So we got a core framework of competencies that apply to everywhere, and then we have supporting um, areas for things like specialisms, for technologies, for behaviours, for leadership. and for those domains, so that anyone within health and care can use the framework. And we've gone through about 3 iterations of it now. The final testing, which I've not been involved in this latest development, is out for testing, closes in a couple of days. So hopefully everyone has they've got a lot of data to go on, but everyone that ever used it said it's as good as anything we've ever used before, if not better. I was like, oh wow. And that's not because of anything I did. Yeah. It wasn't my input into what the competencies were. That was people far cleverer than me out in the
well, you can't know it all, can you? Because I mean, essentially, what you've got there is a blueprint for a very nice, well-functioning hospital. You know what I mean? Because you've got to, well, I mean, do you cover off all the departments? Is it competency in
the
which
national
area?
competency framework is just for data professionals in
It's
health and
just
care.
data, right, yeah.
However,
Right.
we developed it consciously such that it could be replicated on any other specialism. If you take HR, take finance, you can develop those core competencies from whichever framework it is that is most appropriate.
Yeah.
And you can break out leadership, you can break out the specialisms that you have within it, you can break out the domains, so that you can actually start a career. In theory, if they ever get to it, which they won't, my worry is that when they lose NHS England, they lose the framework, which would be a disaster. But you could develop. You have your competency framework for analytics. And if you have one for finance, you can start off on your trajectory thinking, okay, I'm level 1 here, I'm level 2 here. But I want to work in finance. You can map the competencies across and identify what it is you need to do to get a job in there and move across into finance or into HR, into a business analysis or into IT. And it provide a fair framework so that everyone across the country is able to manage their careers effectively and effectively for the NHS, so that they're going into a role knowing enough about it to be able to develop into it.
So do you remember there was this thing called Agenda for Change, wasn't there, quite a few
Yes.
years ago? And that was to do with the bandings and I think there was some competency framework within that as well. So is it kind of a replacement for that conceptually, or?
Well, really, Agenda for Change was to address the gender pay gap, because it was awful at the time. It's done that a bit. There's still a long way to go. There are frameworks of how things get assessed within Agenda for Change, and we have mapped it to it. Excuse me, we have mapped it to it, but it's not detailed at all. It doesn't, according to Agenda for Change, data and analysis and data engineering and data science are admin jobs.
Ouch. It reminds me of I turned up at a meeting once with a presentation about data and analytics, and they asked me to fix the printer.
Yeah, happens also too often. But yeah, not that I think there's anything wrong with being identified as being admin. They are, without the admin teams that we've got in the NHS, it would fall apart in absolutely no time.
But it's just not admin. It's just, it's just, it is
data
not
scientists
admin.
train for 7 years before they can call themselves a data scientist.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, I think there's quite for me, I mean, perhaps it's just in my head, but I think there's still a lot of confusion about, what a data scientist is as compared with a data analyst, as a data engineer, and nobody really freaking knows. I mean, again, this talks to your, actually, I think we mention Wittgenstein? I mean, obviously with his thing with language games and, I mean, I found this even in the insurance industry, that the brokers were talking a very different language to the underwriters, and it just sort of, it crops up everywhere, doesn't it?
And that's why we created the framework.
Right. So have you actually got definitions of these terms in there then? I've got to go and look at this. How do I get, I mean, for the
if you
viewers?
go onto the Analyst X website, and something along the lines of professional development, there's a folder for the National Competency Framework, and it breaks down jobs such as data engineering, data analysis. We've got new ones.
Could I have a bash, Joe Huw? Could I just have a go? Is a data engineer someone who's building the actual pipelines and the ETL processes?
Exactly.
And the data analyst is the guy that builds dashboards and does the maths.
Part of it, yeah.
Yeah. Yay, I got it right.
The big difficulty, though, which is why we didn't use the term, is business intelligence.
Yeah.
Because no one has got the same idea of what business intelligence. Some people think it's the analytics. Some people think it's the building of dashboards. Yeah,
I mean, I think it's about insights. It's about understanding kind of correlations between different variables, and sort of try to. Well, that's what I think anyway.
Yeah, I mean, my own opinion is that what you've just described to me is what I would call analysis.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas business intelligence just tends to be data visualization
Mm,
and
yeah.
dashboards.
Actually, that's a giveaway, isn't it? Because they used to call them BI dashboards and BI platforms. So your Oracles,
That's true.
Tableaus,
Yeah,
ClickViews. So yeah,
but
that's a, yeah.
there is no correct answer.
There isn't, is there?
Fortunately, we haven't got business intelligence as a job within there. We've got data visualization as a specialism.
Right, right.
Um,
That's good. I'm glad that's acknowledged because that's really important. I mean, I've met some brilliant analysts in my travels. You know, they can do the math, the insights are there, but then the actual the visualization of the reports just doesn't tell you anything. You know, and
Absolutely.
again, as you said earlier, there's a hell of a lot of managers out there just traipsing through knee deep in reports, and none of them, you know, it's like reports everywhere, but near a drop to drink. You know.
Yeah. Well, I think next week I'm doing a training session, myself and John Varlo, who used to be the director for analytics at NHS Digital. Um, we are doing a workshop on presenting data and data storytelling
Nice.
together. We've done it a few times now. Yeah, is stop complicating it.
Mm, yeah.
Your chart, if you're presenting data, your chart to tell you one thing.
Mm,
That's what you want to tell them.
hmm.
And how do you identify what it is you want to tell them? It's your call to action. There's no point telling someone that this is a change that's happened unless you tell them what it needs to be and how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And nothing will change.
Yeah. I remember when we
Call to
first got
action
our
at all
hands
times.
we first got our hands on Oracle OBIE about 20 years ago or something, and it was just we were so excited about these dials and all the different things you could do on the dashboard. It's like we were just shoving them on there because they look good,
Good.
you know? But they
Yeah.
didn't tell you. It didn't tell you anything. You
Yeah.
know? So
Absolutely.
we quickly realized when people said, "What the hell is this?" You know.
And unfortunately, pie charts still exist.
Mm. They have their place, don't they?
Do they?
What else have we got? How would you do it?
Bar graph,
Yeah, yeah, true, true.
which you can easily tell which one is bigger.
Because you're probably right, because so many of these pie charts, you end up with a really low population groups, and you've just got like 3%, and you've got 10 groups in there, and loads of arrows coming out. They are messy, aren't they? But
Yeah. And
yeah.
arguably, if you're trying to visualize the data, why you're not visualizing the data if you have to have arrows coming out of it with numbers on
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Bar chart, you just got the numbers there. You can see the relationship between them, the proportions. Yeah, you're right. I'll
um,
take a note of that. No more pie charts.
well, I did develop a pie chart now for a while ago, and the big portion of the pie, as it were, um, which said instances where a pie chart is not appropriate. And then in the little section, I put instances where a pie chart is also not appropriate, just in a different color.
So they're never appropriate.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. I like that. So what else? What else have we got here? So in terms of what technologies do you guys favour? Is it sort of thinking about the nuts and bolts of this, or
Oh,
is
I
it
don't.
not really about that, or are you kind of technology agnostic? Do you
I'm
guys not?
completely agnostic.
Yeah.
Because arguably, I mean, if you look at you refer back to the framework again, that's one reason why we ripped out all the technology from it. Because if we'd written that 20 years ago,
Mm.
everyone would be trained in Oracle and nothing else.
Yeah. 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 Indeed.
Um,
Because it's such a this is what I was trying to hint at a minute ago. It's such a rapidly changing and evolving scene within itself. It's quite
yeah,
hard to manage, isn't it? You look at whereas the medical specialties and their understanding of physiology slowly moves forward. Data and analytics potentials just again it's exponential, isn't it? The last 10,
yeah.
20 years.
It's about understanding why you're using it and what you're using it for. Then you can just differentiate between um, business objects or whatever else you want to use.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, it's about understanding the core principles behind it. What does the data need to look like in order to be able to use this? Once you've got that, you can say, right, which is the best option for visualizing this data? And then you can do it through that. The technology itself is useful to programmers and that sort of developer, but a BI developer doesn't necessarily need to focus on a specific technology. They need to understand the requirements of the data.
Mm,
Um, Ultimately, there's always a software house somewhere that will develop something. There's always a specialist Java developer that can put something together for you.
mm.
Um, but you need to know that your data is right and being read in the right way,
Yeah.
being used in the right way in order to get the intelligence from it. So I think for me, completely technology agnostic, as you say.
Mm.
It doesn't. I don't think it's particularly productive to pin yourself to one mast.
Mm.
Because I did that. I pinned myself to one mast for many, many years. Um,
Which
but
mast
then
was that?
that was the Nokia mast.
Right.
Um, and then all of a sudden they didn't make smartphones properly, and I was forced into traveling across to HTC. Um, I still say the Nokias were the greatest phones ever made,
The
but
friends of
they
mine have
stopped
still
being.
got them, the old little Nokia things, and they can still do
Yeah,
programming on them. They could write little Java apps for them and stuff.
yeah, absolutely.
I
Well,
mean,
I
they're
used to have
total
the
geeks, but
yeah. Well, I used to have the whole Nokia 402 and 3210 and
right,
6150 and all those proper
proper real phones.
a phone that will last for 10 days on one charge.
Yeah, you can
Yeah,
throw it at the wall and it still works. This kind of. Not that
exactly.
I ever did that.
No, I must admit, I did get myself one of the HTC smartphones when they came out in 2004.
Right.
Um, my boss thought I was trying to control satellites with it. It was hilarious. Um, but by pinning yourself to that kind of technology too soon,
Yeah.
you find out that you've been using it, and no one saw the iPhone coming
Mm,
in 2007. Bang. So yeah, I don't think it's wise to pin your technology to one mast.
yeah. Well, and as you said, I mean, if AGI is closer than what did you say, about 20 years, maybe? I mean, if it turns up in 2 years' time, well,
Hmm.
what that? I mean, but couldn't you just, I mean, deploy AGI on a whole hospital data and information infrastructure and just fix the whole thing? It would just do it for you, couldn't it?
Why would it want to?
To improve efficiency, resolve DQ issues, configuration problems, this kind of stuff. Write its own code, to develop.
This is the thing that I'm concerned with uncontrolled AGI. You'd set it to a task, but it having its own general intelligence, it must also have impulse. And
Mm,
where do those impulses come from? If those impulses are programmed into it, then arguably does
mm,
it have that independence of thought because it's following the um, commands that's been written into its programming. So to
mm,
have true independence of thought, you're going to have to program it with suggestions rather than
mm.
commands.
Yeah, yeah. Make
Um,
it think
and
it thought of it.
and ultimately, it's going to have to think that it wants to. It's got an objective. It's got something that it wants to achieve.
Mm,
All those things that you mentioned. Um, but if you drop it in there, and as you say, part of it is reprogramming itself, and there are programs out there that reprogram themselves at the moment.
yeah, yeah.
Um, there's no control. Then it's gone.
Mm,
It's a bit like saying we will plant genetically modified crops in this field and expect it not to enter the ecosystem.
yeah.
You know, um, I, yes, I do see a possible world where AI runs hospitals
Mm, yeah.
and robots do the surgeries.
Mm. Well, we've got robots
Um,
doing the surgery now, haven't we? But I
yeah,
mean, they're still manually controlled, aren't
they're
they?
still
By
manually
yeah.
controlled. Yeah, um, they must be better at computer games than me. That's all I'm saying. Um, but I think that there are risks to that happening without it being more heavily controlled than.
Mm,
Well, I don't. If we had AGI now, I think it would take at least 5 years, if not 10 years, for us to build up the controls in order to be able to use it.
mm. There's
Of
also the
course, we won't. We'll just use it and see what happens. But
mm, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that seems to be how things really go. We try to govern ourselves. We try to govern ourselves, but everyone wants TikTok. Everyone wants Temu. Everyone will just. It's just like we're kids in a candy store, really, aren't we? But I was just thinking this. It's a bit more in the sort of clinical domain. But I mean, obviously, the surgeons are very very smart people. The trauma and orthopedics guys, literally mechanically putting people back together. But quite a lot of the real healing is actually the nursing, isn't it? And the aftercare and being taken care of psychologically as well as physiologically. And so that's something that I don't think we can ever automate, can we? So we're always going to want human beings there, right? Are we?
I think yes and no. I think there's a certain comfort in knowing that it isn't a person seeing you in a particular situation.
Yeah, true.
Um,
We're quite vulnerable, aren't we? There's something kind of we
it's a
don't like
balance
being
between
seen with our pants down in a way, yeah.
literally in many instances.
Exactly, yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't think the nurse will ever be replaced because he or she just does such an incredible job that I don't think can be automated.
Mm,
Can a surgeon be automated? Yes, to an extent, but there are decisions that surgeons make um, that a computer probably wouldn't.
mm,
Um, would a computer carry on when there was only a 5% chance of
mm. Yeah,
survival?
yeah.
And at what point does a computer say, well, actually, no, below 3.5%, I'll stop?
Mm,
Well, a surgeon can see, but I can do that.
yeah. And they might have an intuitive feel for the situation
Yeah.
that shows them a way forward that the computer just can't. Well, maybe AGI can, I don't know, but
Well, they say you can intuit, but I'd be surprised.
mm,
I don't think actually that a computer will ever be able to intuit anything. Um, because for me, intuition is just the subconscious parts of the brain recalling
mm,
um, events that have happened through life and giving you a feeling that last time you did this, a rake hit you in the face.
yeah. So there's nothing
Um,
magical about it. It is literally just kind of associative learning, but just we're not
yeah,
always conscious of it. Yeah,
exactly that.
yeah.
Which is why I tend to trust intuition nearly as much as I do my memory,
Mm.
because memory can be fooled
Oh
more
God, yeah.
more easily.
Oh God,
Certainly mine
the
can.
number of things that people conflict with me now. It seems that every year I, have a newer version of past events than they do, and things like
Yeah,
you
it's the
literally done something with someone 10 years ago, and we both tell the story, and it's completely different.
same.
So-
Yeah, well, my dad tells a story. It's different every time from him. Um, but yeah, there's the whole Mandela effect and the
Mm,
different ways and things in which things are remembered.
yeah.
Um, and it's fascinating. The human brain is probably made more beautiful by its fallibility.
Mm,
And it's those quirks which make us all so interesting.
mm,
Um, and it means it's those fallibilities and those strengths that we all have so differently.
mm.
That a friend of mine in uni, he won a Radio 3 Young Thinker of the Year, probably about
Nice.
2002. He's a great bloke.
Yeah.
He said to me at the time, I was really annoyed with this one guy because he was completely abusive to many people and drank too much and just not a nice guy. And he
Wow.
said, Hugh, I've never met anyone I can't learn from.
Like
And
that.
I was like, do you know what, you're right.
Yeah.
And even though I cannot like someone, I'll
Mm,
never cut anyone off because there's still things to be learned,
too bloody right.
even if it's just a new form of contempt.
Brilliant. So, I mean, Hugh, is there anything you would like to talk about? You know, anything you'd like to
Um,
cover?
yeah, not really. I mean, I think everything that I do is kind of really, and I'm pleased to be able to use this word in a way that I understand it these days, is authentic. I set up the business because it's an area of work that I love doing. I love
Mm,
working with a data professional. I think they're phenomenal people. I think the NHS is the best organisation ever.
mm,
So, and my PhD was just something I did in the same way that work is just something I do. I don't
mm,
have a work-life balance because I love work as much as life.
mm,
It's just something I can get on and do, which is great. Because the moment I started, people have said it before, since setting up my business, I haven't worked a day in my life.
yeah,
It's
because it's fun
it's
for you.
just a
You
hobby where
enjoy
I
it.
get to,
Yeah.
yeah, I get to meet some incredible people and learn.
Mm.
And when I have time, sit down and watch the Stephen Wolfram interview you did a year or so ago. It's
Wow.
brilliant. That was.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I mean, I sometimes wonder whether it might be interesting to chat to the likes of Wolfram and perhaps some of the other guests to think about, some of the problems
Yeah.
in the NHS. I mean, what would he have to say about it? How
Well,
would he
I
look at it?
think his input would be rather valuable.
Mm.
Very bright guy. And in fact, when I started at uni, there was a lecture that was being done. Sorry, when I did my undergraduate, I got the best named degree in the world. There's nothing as good as it sounds, but it's philosophy and international politics with subsidiaries in classics and astrophysics. So it sounds amazing, but really it was just GCSE maths worked on astrophysics equations.
Yeah.
Um, but I love astrophysics. I went to university with the physics of Star Trek, and I've never looked back.
Mm.
Um, so I was very,
So you're a
very
bit of a
pleased
you're
to
a bit of a
start.
polymath yourself, then. It sounds like
A
you've
little
got
bit.
a wide range of interests. You mentioned Nietzsche and loads of different philosophers as well. So that's a real gift. Thanks for that, Hugh. I didn't know you had an interest in philosophy as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And sport and all stuff. Love music, and yeah, life is a rich tapestry. If you don't look at every thread, you don't see the
Mm.
picture. Um,
Mm. Love that.
but yeah, there was in the uni there was a special lecture by Sir Roger Penrose,
Oh wow.
and yeah, that was just. I think I was with him for about 45% of it, and then
Yeah.
head
Yeah, I mean,
exploded.
I had what was his book, The Arrow of Time, I think he wrote.
Yeah.
That was one of the most dense books, like because I was quite into popular science and stuff at the time, brief
Mhm.
history of time, all this stuff. But that was just, I mean, I think I got through about three chapters. Then it became just unreadable.
Yeah.
But I
Well,
reckon if I went back to it now, I'd have a better chance.
oh, it was brilliant. It wasn't
But
actually that complicated. It was when he was talking about um, seeing gravitational shadows of previous universes that was.
wow.
Yeah.
Well, because I mean, he's saying some pretty radical stuff at the moment as well. He's kind of saying that quantum physics is basically wrong. He's saying that the Big Bang is probably not the case, and so these kind of it's quite
As,
interesting.
as being a starting point, he's probably right.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
there was something before, if you can use that term, the
yeah.
Big Bang. It doesn't help that our language is so limited that we have to use terms. So what happened before time started then? Well,
I'm
um,
gonna, yeah.
I quite like Dr. Wolfram's idea of the Ruliad with consciousness evolving to
Mm,
be able to understand more and a wider and wider breadth of reality.
perspectives. Yeah,
Yeah.
he goes as far to say that physics is our physics, and that
Yes.
other agents within the cosmos would have different physics based on their own physiology, and that makes total sense to me. Um, but
Absolutely. And if
but
you
Yeah, and the
and if you take
Ruliad, in a
away,
way, is that one thing that can unite them all. In a way, it's kind of like every possible rule system. It doesn't quite settle into my brain, but
yeah, well, as bringing out the nihilist in me, um, arguably that totality of all possible rules, it would be the removal of every possible rule.
gosh,
The moment you have everything, you can't
yeah,
differentiate between any of it.
yes, yeah, yeah. He said something along those lines, didn't he? He said if you gained the perspective necessary to understand the universe, you would just end up being the universe, and then you wouldn't be able to
Yeah,
see anything. Something along
yeah,
those lines. But I asked him another thing. I said, look, I said, so if you ran one of your physics simulations forward, you play it forward, and you get all you really fix everything. You understand physics and the whole thing. I said, would conscious entities emerge within your software? And he said, yeah. I think maybe I've misunderstood it, but so he basically said that his simulated. So he's kind of saying that the universe is a computer,
Mm.
but not like sat on someone's desktop,
No, absolutely.
but it's a
It is a form of computer.
computational.
I
Yeah.
think I think he's right. I think a plant is a form of computer.
Hmm.
It has processes that it has to
Inputs,
follow. Yeah,
outputs. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. Um, and it's the internal dialogue or exchange of neurological firings or cells changing form and all the rest of it
Mm.
that just means this is some form of very exciting but an unknown computer. Do trees have souls?
Mm.
Probably not. I don't think we do. But do they have consciousness? Possibly.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah.
there's nothing to say that they don't. I think the only thing around all of that, I would say, I would believe that people struggle to is the fact that I just don't think there's such a thing as free will.
right. Okay, yeah. Certainly not in
Well,
the colloquial sense in which people think of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, I don't see why um, all the laws of physics, even if we've got them wrong, I don't see any gap in there
Mm,
for a choice.
mm. Yeah. If
It's all
everything.
cause
Yeah.
and effect,
Yeah. Yeah.
albeit a near infinite number of causes to the effect of me saying this now.
This is assuming that there are absolute laws of physics.
It does, absolutely, and where there aren't, it all depends then on your view of the universe. Personally, I half subscribe to the inflationary um, Big Bang. Oh God,
Mm,
mind failing. But anything that can happen will happen, will form its own universe every time
mm,
that decision is made to be making an infinite number of universes of an
mm.
infinite number of choices.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and in that instance, there are no absolute laws because those laws need to transcend all the universes. And
Mm.
as long as it's not illogical,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, right. These
then
physics could just be a particular configuration. Our constants and things like that. It's like just what's that? That's the multiverse theory, isn't it?
yeah,
So,
and it's the inflationary multiverse is the big one. Yeah,
do you know, Hugh? I can't believe that we've gone from talking about sort of NHS data analytics, your program management, and now we're talking about cosmology. I mean, I just think
yeah, that is
that's
true.
honestly
Yeah,
that's a real gift. I didn't quite. I think we've chatted quite a few times in the past, haven't we? But I don't think
yeah,
we've ever touched on cosmology.
yeah. I don't
So
think we've ever given ourselves the luxury of just talking. I
no,
don't think we do that enough in this
no,
world.
no.
To be fair,
No. We should grab a coffee sometime and
I'd love
chew the
that.
cud and go over some of this. But I'm just a
Yeah,
little bit conscious of time. I'm feeling a bit tired as well, to be honest. Actually.
yeah. Know the
But
feeling.
so should we draw it to a close here? Do you think? Is
Yeah,
that?
why not? Absolutely.
But Hugh, it's been an absolute pleasure and privilege to talk to you. And
Likewise. Likewise.
yeah, thank you very much. Take
Not
care,
at all.
mate.
Cheers.
Speak
Bye
soon.
bye.
Bye bye. Hey guys, so yeah, what a super fun chat. Just thinking back, I'm still digesting some of the content there, but Hugh's just got such a sort of polymathic, broad scale view of things. I reckon we could probably talk for a hell of a lot longer about not only those subjects, but many more as well. So I hope this was informative. I'd be curious to hear any other views on some of the topics discussed, so particularly some of Hugh's sort of quite seemingly passionately held views about the way that money is spent in the NHS, and I think some future guests are going to have some views on this as well. So we're building up a kind of a sort of anthology of perspectives on healthcare in Britain, and not only from a sort of technical, clinical, operational standpoint, but from a philosophical, political, moral standpoint. So I hope you enjoyed it. Speak soon. Bye.